Hi guys, this is RETEACH video number 2 by me on dividing multi-digit numbers. So please go ahead and open up your composition notebooks to the next available page and title this Dividing Multi-Digit Numbers, RETEACH number 2. Remember to pause the video when you need to, because I'm going to have you work through a problem on your own first, so you will need to definitely pause the video at that time. Alright, so let's get started. The first problem we're going to work on is 9,364 divided by 613. What I would like for you to do is, when I'm done talking, is to pause the video and work this problem out as best as you can. Now, it will not end perfectly, so you are going to have to add a decimal and a few zeros, but what I want you to do is round this problem to the nearest hundredth. So that would be 2 spots after the decimal point. So that means you've got to go 3 spots afterwards to know where to round it for the second spot. All right, so go ahead and give this problem a try. Do the best that you can, and then when you're ready, push play again on the video recording, and then you can hear me work through the problem. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to think about how many times 613 goes into 9. It doesn't. How many times does it go into 93? It doesn't. But it does go into 936 only one time. So I'm putting an X over the 9 and the 3. I put my 1 over the 6 because that tells me that 613 goes into 936 one time. I'm going to multiply, and now I'm going to subtract. So I'm going to bring down my next available number, which is the 4, and I start my division all over again. So this is the part where I ask myself, well, I like to do some front-end guessing. Remember, we have to kind of guesstimate on this because not everybody knows their 613s and to figure out how many times it goes into 3,230. So this is where you're going to have to kind of do some guessing and checking. So what I like to do is I like to look at the front-end numbers. So in 613 in our divisor, I'm thinking about the 6, and in the, I went too far in my video here, and in the 32, and I'm going to backtrack here for a second, and in the 32, I think to myself, well, how many times does 6 go into 32? I know 6 times 5 gives me 30, so therefore I'm going to start with that. So what I'm going to do off to the side is, this is where I multiply 6 times, or 3,230 times 6, and I end up getting 3,265. Erase this part here. So now I'm going to take my 3,065 and I'm going to put it underneath my 3,230. I'm going to subtract. I end up getting 165. Now you'll notice here that I don't have any other numbers in my dividend, which is the number that's underneath the box. So this is where I have to add a decimal point and a 0. So I'm going to do that now, and I brought down my 0. Now don't forget to bring your 0 up to your quotient line as well, because if you forget to do it now, you might forget later. Or if you don't do it now, I meant to say, you might forget to do it later, and then your answer will be way, way wrong. Okay, not even close. All right, so now I start dividing again. So I think once again, 6 and then my 16. About how many times does 6 go into 16? Well, I know 6 times 2 gives me 12, so I'm probably going to start with 1,650, or I'm going to start with 613 times 2 and see what I get that way. So you'll notice here that I got 1226. I went ahead and wrote it in my problem. I'm going to subtract it. And I end up getting 4,000. Well, I get 424. And then I brought down my other 0 that I had to add. And I got 4,240. Okay, so now I have to start all over again. How many times does 6 go into, remember I'm looking at the front numbers, 42. So I know that 6 times 7 gives me 42, so I'm going to start with that one. So off to the side, that's what I'm going to do. Okay, now if you notice here, I have, over here on the right, I have 4,291, but look what I have over here. I only have 4,240. So my guess of 613 times 7 is too big because I'm going to get a number that's bigger than what I have. So that means I've got to go one lower. So this is an example where I guessed the number, I checked it, it does not work. And so therefore I have to guess again. So since I was close, I'm going to say 6. So 6 definitely goes into it. So I multiply it out to figure out what I get. So here I went ahead and plugged it in and I subtracted. Now you notice that our problem is still not over yet. I still have 562 at the bottom of my division problem. So I'm going to add yet again another 0. So I added the 0 and brought it down. So now once again I'm thinking, well, how many times does 6 go into 56? All right. So I know that 6 times 8 gives me 48, 6 times 9 gives me 54. So I'm thinking, which of those two am I going to use? So I'm going to guess 6 times the 9. So I end up getting 5,517. Now, I'm not going to bother dividing this guy out or finishing it out down at the bottom because remember at the beginning of this problem, I had told you that I want you to round it to the nearest hundredth. Well, if I were to put a box around where my hundredth spot is, okay, so this is right here in the orange box up at my quotient, this is what my number should look like. I have a 15, a decimal point, and then 2 digits that come after that decimal point. That's my hundredth spot. So that 6 is in the hundredth spot. However, I can't just ignore the 9. I have to think about what am I going to do with that 9. So the 9 is what's knocking on my back door. So remember the little saying, like 5 or more, raise a score, 4 or less, let it rest. So this 9 right over here is 5 or more, which means that I have to take my 6, which is that guy right there, and raise it just one more digit up. So instead of 15.26, my final answer on this one's going to be 15 and 27/100ths. All right, guys, this is an example where we did have to add 3 additional zeros after our decimal point, but be sure to read your directions carefully for every problem that you complete because sometimes you're going to be asked to round it to the nearest 10th or the nearest 100th, so you don't have to keep going forever because you end up wasting a lot of time and energy, and it does get frustrating when your problems don't end. So be sure to read carefully because, I will rarely ever have you go beyond 3 zeros that you would have to add. All right, so that's it for now. Be sure to have these notes ready to go, and happy testing.